My name is Claire. I'm 35, and I'm a single mom to my two incredible kids, Mia and Leo. On paper, growing up in a wealthy family seems like something out of a storybook. But our family story had a dark undercurrent, a persistent tide of favoritism that always flowed toward my older sister, Sophie. For years, I put up with the weekly Sunday dinners where my children and I were made to feel like the poor relations, the second-class citizens at the table. But about a month ago, something as simple as a takeout order became the final straw, the one thing that broke decades of silent endurance. What happened when I finally found my voice and stood up for my kids sent shockwaves through my entire family and set us on a path that would change our lives in ways I never could have imagined. Before I get into what happened on that night, I'd love to know where you're all watching from. Go ahead and drop it in the comments. And if you've ever had to draw a line in the sand with a difficult family member, hit that subscribe button. You're in good company. To really understand how a few delivery menus could detonate a family, you have to understand the landscape of my childhood. My parents, Robert and Catherine Harrison, built a manufacturing empire from the ground up in the suburbs of Chicago. They amassed a fortune that put us in a world most people only see in movies. Our childhood home was a sprawling, custom-built estate with a 9-bedroom main house, professionally landscaped grounds that rolled down to a private lake, and a small army of staff to keep it all running. But all that opulence was built on a foundation of cold, conditional affection. From day one, my sister Sophie was the anointed one, the golden child. She was a carbon copy of my mother, with the same waterfall of blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and a smile that seemed to bend the world to her will. She was 4 years older than me, and she figured out very early that all she had to do was ask, and the world would be hers. Her piano recitals were mandatory family events. Her childish paintings were professionally matted and hung in the gallery-like central hall. Every minor academic award she received was an excuse for a catered party. Me? I was the quiet, responsible one. I had my father's dark hair and thoughtful brown eyes, a constant, subtle reminder of a side of the family my mother never quite approved of. While I consistently brought home top marks and won regional science fairs, my successes were met with dismissive comments. "Well, that's what we expect from you, Claire," or "Of course you did well. It's not like you have a bustling social life to distract you." There were no parties for my dean's list certificates, no frames for my debate trophies. They were simply expected. When it came to college, the disparity became even more glaring. Sophie went to Northwestern, her mediocre grades glossed over by a hefty donation, and she was supported by a bottomless monthly allowance. I, on the other hand, earned a full academic scholarship to the University of Chicago for my teaching degree. Even then, I had to listen to their thinly veiled disappointment about my modest ambition for someone of my pedigree. The pattern, of course, bled into our adult lives. Sophie married Mark, a tech sales VP from another prominent family, in a wedding that cost more than my first home. I met Daniel, a kind, brilliant architect, at a friend's barbecue. When we announced our engagement, my mother's first and only question was about a prenuptial agreement, a topic that was never, ever broached with Sophie. As adults, Sophie's charmed life continued uninterrupted. She has never held a job, preferring to spend her days chairing charity committees and attending luncheons, which she passed off as networking. My parents gifted her and Mark a luxury condo in the city as a wedding present, and have continued to quietly subsidize their extravagant lifestyle ever since. I, meanwhile, carved out a career as a public elementary school teacher. I found a deep, genuine sense of purpose in shaping young minds, even if the salary was a constant source of stress. 3 years ago, the life I had so carefully built shattered. I discovered Daniel was having an affair with a colleague. The divorce was brutally fast and emotionally devastating, leaving me to raise our 2 children almost entirely on my own. Daniel's child support payments are sporadic at best and never quite enough to cover the gaps. My parents could have been a lifeline during that nightmarish time, but instead they offered only criticism. They questioned why I hadn't tried harder to keep him, And my mother even once suggested that my focus on my career had probably made him feel neglected. Despite all these hurdles, I am fiercely proud of the life I provide for Mia and Leo. Mia, who is now 10, has my passion for reading and can lose herself for hours, sketching in her notebook, creating entire worlds. She's my sensitive soul, always the first to sense when someone is hurting. 8-year-old Leo is our little engineer, forever dismantling old electronics to see how they work and asking a million questions that send me straight to Google. They are both exceptionally polite and kind, a fact that's been noted by every teacher they've ever had. The tradition of weekly Sunday dinners at my parents' estate started when Sophie and I both had children. Family needs to gather, my mother would declare. In reality, these dinners became a weekly performance, a stage designed to showcase the glaring differences in how our families, and especially our children, were valued. Sophie's kids, Noah, who's 12, and Chloe, who's 9, would show up armed with the newest iPads and wearing designer outfits that cost more than my monthly car payment. They'd interrupt adult conversations, demand that the cook prepare special meals just for them, and often damage furniture or decorations with zero repercussions. In stark contrast, my children were taught to be nearly invisible at these gatherings. They knew to speak only when spoken to eat whatever was served without a single complaint, and to always offer to help clear the table, an offer that was always met with a condescending wave of the hand and "We have staff for that, dear." The little digs, the constant stream of passive-aggressive jabs, were the background music to these meals. "That sweater is so practical, Claire. I suppose teachers must be frugal with their clothing choices." Or, "The children look so robust." It's amazing, really, without all those expensive travel sports. I learned to swallow these insults, convincing myself that it was worth the emotional toll to maintain some semblance of a family connection for my children. But in the last few months, the cruelty had become more overt. Sophie had just returned from a 3-week tour of Italy, a mental health getaway entirely bankrolled by our parents. Meanwhile, I was teaching summer school just to afford new sneakers and backpacks for Mia and Leo. Every Sunday, Sophie would hold court, regaling us with stories of Tuscan villas and private boat tours, all while casting smug, pitying glances in my direction. My parents would just beam, remarking on how cultured their grandchildren were becoming, a pointed jab at the fact that my kids had never been on a plane. I had learned to bury my pride and my anger deep down, but I had no idea that on this one particular Sunday, a simple decision about what to eat for dinner would finally expose the rot at the core of my family and force me to act. That fateful Sunday began just like any other in our small 2-bedroom apartment. I was up at dawn, even though it was my one day to sleep in, because Mia needed help gluing together her solar system diorama for school, and Leo wanted to practice his reading with me. The morning sun streamed into our little kitchen as I made pancakes shaped like animals, a small, free tradition that always made our tight budget feel a little less suffocating. "Mom, do you think Grandma will like the picture I drew for her?" Mia asked, her brow furrowed with concentration as she carefully slid her masterpiece into a protective folder. She'd spent half the morning on a detailed family portrait, even managing to capture the intricate pattern on my mother's favorite pearl necklace. "It's absolutely beautiful, honey. I'm sure she'll adore it," I said, forcing a warmth I didn't feel. I privately braced myself for it to be politely accepted and then immediately handed off to the housekeeper, destined for the same special drawer that held all of my children's other undisplayed artwork, a stark contrast to the prime real estate on the Sub-Zero fridge reserved for Noah and Chloe's scribbles. By lunchtime, I was guiding the kids through making a homemade apple crisp to bring for dessert. My parents would never dream of asking Sophie to contribute a dish, but the rule that you never arrive empty-handed had been drilled into me since childhood. Even though we were family, I always felt like a guest who had to earn her keep. "Can I do the crumble topping, Mom?" Leo asked, stretching on his tiptoes to see into the bowl. "Of course, buddy. Just do it gently, remember?" "Like you're sprinkling fairy dust," I said, demonstrating the light touch with my fingers. Just as we were sliding it into the oven, I heard a sickening drip, drip, drip sound from the parking lot below our window. I rushed over and saw a dark pool of fluid spreading from underneath my 12-year-old Toyota Camry. My stomach plummeted. An unexpected car repair was the last thing our razor-thin budget could handle. "Is everything okay, Mom?" Mia asked, her perceptive eyes catching my worried expression. "Just a little car trouble, sweetie." "Nothing for us to worry about," I lied, plastering on a smile. "Let me just call Mr. Henderson." My neighbor, a retired mechanic, sometimes helped me out with minor fixes. An hour and $120 later, Mr. Henderson had applied a temporary patch. It would get us to my parents' house and back, but he warned me that the radiator needed a proper, expensive repair very soon. That unexpected cost meant I'd have to put off buying Mia new school shoes, again. Her current ones were already looking painfully worn. By the time we were finally on the road, we were running almost half an hour late. I called my mother to let her know and was met with an audible, theatrical sigh and a lecture about how punctuality is a sign of respect. The familiar stress headache that always preceded these dinners began to throb behind my temples. We pulled up to the imposing wrought iron gates of the Harrison estate at 4:50 p.m., a full 50 minutes past the suggested arrival time. The grand circular driveway was already lined with luxury cars, including a brand new Escalade I'd never seen before. "Whoa, did Aunt Sophie get another new car?" Leo whispered in awe as we carried our apple crisp up the sweeping stone steps to the massive front door. "Looks that way," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. I refused to plant seeds of resentment in my children, no matter how much the blatant disparity churned in my own gut. Sophie's last new car was barely a year old. The heavy oak door swung open before we could even press the bell. It was Maria, my parents' longtime housekeeper. Her kind, weary eyes offered the only genuine welcome we ever received in this house. "They're in the grand room, Miss Claire," she said softly as she took our coats. "The mood is complicated today," she added in a near-silent whisper, our old code that meant I needed to be on high alert. As we made our way through the echoing marble-floored foyer, I saw a large stack of designer suitcases near the base of the main staircase. Before I could even wonder who was visiting, my mother's sharp voice cut through the air from the living room. "Well, look what the cat dragged in." We were about to send out a search party, Claire. My mother was perched on her favorite silk damask sofa, a crystal glass of Chardonnay in hand. She didn't get up. At 64, Catherine Harrison still possessed the rigid posture and slender frame of her youth, her silver blonde hair coiffed into a perfect helmet-like bob. "I'm so sorry we're late, Mom. We had car trouble," I explained, gently pushing my children forward. "We brought dessert." My father, engrossed in the financial section of the weekend paper, didn't even look up. "Maria, take that to the kitchen," he commanded, his voice a low rumble, still not making eye contact. At 66, Robert Harrison was still an imposing figure with a full head of silver hair and the custom-tailored suits he wore even on weekends. Sophie was draped across a chaise lounge, lazily scrolling on her phone. "Car trouble? Again?" she drawled, not looking up. "Maybe it's time to get a reliable vehicle, Claire. You know, like an adult." Her kids, Noah and Chloe, were sprawled on an expensive Persian rug, their faces illuminated by the glow of what looked like brand new virtual reality headsets. "Grandma, Grandpa, we're here!" Chloe finally shrieked, noticing our arrival and scrambling to her feet to run toward my parents. "Did you bring me a present?" My mother's face instantly transformed, her cold expression melting away. She set down her wine to pull Chloe into a hug. "Oh, my darling girl. I found the most exquisite antique doll for you. Maria had it professionally restored." Mia, bless her heart, stepped forward, her drawing held out in front of her like a fragile offering. "I made this for you, Grandma." My mother took the paper between her thumb and forefinger as if it were contaminated. How quaint. Maria can find a safe place for it. She handed the drawing off to the housekeeper without a second glance. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from saying anything and placed a reassuring hand on Mia's shoulder as I saw her face fall. "It's beautiful, Mia. Maybe Grandma will hang it in her office later." My mother just made a non-committal sound and immediately turned her attention back to Chloe, who was now gleefully unwrapping a porcelain doll I recognized as a family heirloom I had never been allowed to even touch as a child. Leo stood beside me, shifting his weight awkwardly as he watched Noah show off his new VR game to my father. My dad nodded along, showing a level of engagement he had never once displayed for Leo's carefully constructed Lego creations or science experiments. "Claire, the children look like they've shot up again," my mother observed, her eyes raking over Mia and Leo with thinly veiled disapproval. "It's so challenging at that age, isn't it? They just keep needing things." Before I could even form a reply, Sophie chimed in. "Well, Mother, some of us plan for these things. We don't wait until our children look like they've been clothed by a charity drive. The casual cruelty of it was a physical blow, but years of practice had taught me to keep my face a placid mask." "We're doing just fine. Thank you," I said, my voice clipped. As we endured the stilted pre-dinner chit-chat, I noticed more signs that something was off. Sophie kept making odd, pointed remarks about her husband Mark being away on an extended business trip. My father seemed agitated, constantly checking his phone with a deep frown. And my mother, who prided herself on being the perfect hostess, hadn't even offered my children a glass of juice. After about 20 minutes of this strained atmosphere, my mother clapped her hands together with false brightness. "I am simply too drained to even think about cooking tonight after hosting the garden club benefit yesterday. We'll order in." This was unheard of. In over a decade of these Sunday dinners, my mother had never once suggested takeout. She was famous for her pointed comments about people who couldn't be bothered to provide a proper home-cooked meal for their family. My father nodded emphatically. "Excellent idea. Let's not spare any expense. The children should have whatever their hearts desire." The way he said the children, while looking directly at Noah and Chloe, made it perfectly clear which children he was referring to. As Maria began passing around drinks, freshly squeezed orange juice for Sophie's kids, tap water for mine, I had a growing, sinking feeling that the strange tension in the room was a prelude to something, and that I was somehow at the center of it. I just couldn't figure out how. "Let's all gather in the family room to decide what we're having," my mother announced, herding us from the formal sitting room into the cavernous two-story great room with its panoramic windows overlooking the lake. This was the room where no one under 16 was usually allowed without direct supervision. My father retrieved a small leather-bound notebook and a gold Mont Blanc pen from his jacket pocket, the same tools he used to broker multi-million-dollar deals. "All right, then. What's the verdict, Catherine? Why don't you start with the children?" My mother beamed as she turned to my sister's offspring. "Noah, Chloe, darlings, what would you like for dinner tonight? Absolutely anything." Noah didn't even bother to take off his VR headset. "I want sushi from Katsu, the omakase menu, and make sure they include the fatty tuna with caviar." Chloe, twirling a lock of her blonde hair, piped up, "I want pasta from Spiaggia, the one with the white truffle sauce, and the burrata appetizer. And for dessert, I want the chocolate lava cake." My father diligently scribbled down their requests, nodding in approval. Excellent choices, top tier. Katsu is a fine establishment, and we can certainly order from Spiaggia as well. Sophie stretched languidly on the sofa. "I'll have the Chilean sea bass from Spiaggia, with a side of their grilled asparagus, and make sure they send a bottle of the San Pellegrino." My mother nodded and then looked at my father. "Robert, what about you? I think I'll join Noah with the sushi, a nice bottle of Junmai Daginjo sake to go with it," he replied, still writing. As this went on, I saw my own children whispering to each other, their faces full of a hopeful excitement that broke my heart. Mia's eyes had lit up at the mention of pasta, her absolute favorite food, but one we could rarely afford at a restaurant. Leo was likely debating whether a fancy place like that would even have a hamburger, his go-to special occasion meal. I gave them a small, encouraging smile, thinking that maybe, just maybe, this bizarre turn of events would result in a pleasant evening for them. At least they'd get a meal they loved. After my mother listed her own elaborate order for a deconstructed Caesar salad and lobster thermidor, a heavy silence descended on the room. My children looked up, their eyes wide with anticipation, waiting for their grandparents to ask them what they wanted. I waited too, the childhood rule of don't speak out of turn, so deeply ingrained in me that I didn't dare presume to speak for them. The silence stretched. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Finally, I prompted them gently. Mia, Leo, what would you two like to eat? Before either of them could utter a word, my mother's face hardened into the cold, dismissive mask I knew so well. With a flick of her wrist, she said, her voice flat and icy, "Your kids can eat whatever scraps are left in the kitchen. They're not guests here." The words hit me with the force of a physical slap. The air in the room seemed to crystallize, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. Beside me, I felt Mia go rigid, and Leo's small hand gripped mine like a vice. Before I could even process the cruelty, Sophie let out a derisive little laugh. "And don't forget, Claire," she added, inspecting her perfectly manicured nails. "I'm staying here all week, so you'll be covering my meals too." She looked up at me with a smirk. "Mark is traveling for work, and I just can't bear rattling around that big house all by myself. Mother and Father insisted I stay here, and since they're footing the bill for Noah and Chloe, you can handle my tab." My mind was spinning, trying to connect the dots. Me covering her meals? At our parents' house? My children being told to eat leftovers? What in the world was going on? My father cleared his throat. A sound that instantly transported me back to my childhood, a sound that always preceded a verdict. "Claire, stop sitting there with that bewildered look on your face. Go and set the table like a good little servant. That's what you're good at, isn't it? Taking care of the unpleasant details no one else wants to deal with." And in that single brutal moment, everything snapped into focus. All the years of being pushed aside, of being the responsible one, of watching my children be treated as less than, it all coalesced into a single, blinding point of clarity. This wasn't just another Sunday dinner, this was a calculated attack. A power play designed to break me down before they revealed what they really wanted. The suitcases in the hall, Sophie's sudden extended stay, the palpable tension, it was all a prelude. I looked down at my children's faces, at the raw hurt and confusion clouding their eyes, and I made a decision. In that frozen second, a lifetime of slights flashed through my mind. The Christmas, my parents opened the thoughtful, saved-for gifts from my children with polite, strained smiles before setting them aside, only to immediately have Chloe's crayon drawing professionally framed. The time they showed up to Leo's 8th birthday party 2 hours late, bearing extravagant gifts for Noah, so he wouldn't feel left out, but with nothing for the actual birthday boy. The Thanksgiving, my mother declared my homemade pie perfectly adequate for a home baker, before serving an array of professionally made desserts. For years, I had swallowed it all. I had told myself it was for the kids, that they needed a relationship with their grandparents, no matter the cost to my own dignity. I had convinced myself that enduring their condescension was a form of strength, that it was teaching my children a lesson in patience. But as I looked at their crushed expressions, I realized I had been teaching them a far more toxic lesson, that they should quietly accept being treated as if they didn't matter. A strange calm settled over me. I squeezed my children's hands. "Mia, Leo, we're going," I said, my voice low but unwavering. My father's head snapped up. "Don't be absurd, Claire. You're overreacting as usual." "No one is leaving," my mother added, her smile like a sliver of ice. "You always do this. Make a mountain out of a molehill. The children can have a sandwich. It's not as if their palates can appreciate fine dining." Sophie rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, here we go. St. Clair, the martyr. Just get over it. Some people are more important than others. That's just how the world works. I stood my ground, my hands resting on my children's shoulders. No, Sophie. That's how your world works, not ours. Not anymore. My father waved a dismissive hand. Sit down, Claire. This little tantrum is embarrassing. We have important family financial matters to discuss after dinner. The way he said it confirmed my suspicion. This was about more than just dinner. But whatever their crisis was, I suddenly realized I didn't care. I had spent a lifetime caring what they thought, seeking their approval, and it had gotten me nowhere. I'm sure you do, I said, my voice steady as I guided my children toward the hall. But you'll have to discuss them without me. My mother's face registered genuine shock, as if the thought of me actually defying a direct order had never occurred to her. You can't just walk out. What about family loyalty? The sheer hypocrisy of that statement almost made me laugh. Loyalty is a two-way street, Mother. As we reached the foyer, I knelt down to look my children in the eye. Go get your jackets, okay? We're going to go have a very special dinner, just the three of us. Their eyes were wide, a mixture of fear and relief. Are you sure, Mom? Mia whispered. Grandma seems really, really mad. I am 100% sure, sweetie. We deserve to be treated with kindness and respect. And if we can't get it here, we'll find it somewhere else. While the kids fetched their jackets from Maria, who was hovering in the background with a look of profound sympathy, Sophie appeared in the doorway. You know they only invited you today because they need something, right? She hissed, her voice a strange cocktail of venom and something that sounded bizarrely like envy. They were going to ask you to let me and the kids move in with you for a while. I told them you'd never say yes unless they softened you up first. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Move in with me? Why would you need to move in with me? Sophie picked at an imaginary thread on her cashmere sweater, avoiding my gaze. It's just some temporary financial restructuring. Mark's company is making some changes. It's nothing. Before I could even respond to that, my father was there, his face thunderous. Claire, stop this foolishness this instant. Your sister is in a difficult position, and as family, it is your obligation to help her. My 2-bedroom apartment, I asked? The absurdity of it all making me feel lightheaded. The one you've always called a depressing little shoebox? That's suddenly suitable for Sophie and her children? It's only for a few months until we get some investment issues sorted out, my father snapped. Your sister is accustomed to a certain standard of living. And what about my children? What is their standard of living worth to this family? My mother now joined the blockade, completing the trifecta of disapproval. You are being utterly selfish, Claire. Your sister needs you. Mia and Leo returned, jackets on, and pressed themselves against my legs. I put my arms around them, a protective shield. We are leaving. If you want to discuss Sophie staying with us, you can call me tomorrow and ask. Properly. With the same respect you would show a stranger you were asking for a massive favor. Sophie snorted. Unbelievable. She's actually leaving. I told you she'd become impossible since the divorce. As we turned for the door, my father's voice boomed behind us. If you walk out that door, don't you dare come crawling back to us when you need something. Family isn't something you can just turn on and off when it suits you. I paused at the threshold and looked back at the three of them, a united front of entitlement and scorn. When have I ever been able to come to you for help? Not when Daniel left me, not when I was desperate for childcare so I could keep my job, not when Mia needed braces. All I have ever received from you is judgment and a constant barrage of reminders that we are not good enough. That ends tonight. With that, I walked my children out into the cool evening air, the sound of their sputtering protests fading behind us. As we buckled into the old Camry, Leo looked up at me, his eyes huge. Are we in big trouble, Mom? I squeezed his hand and smiled, a real smile this time. No, sweetheart. For the first time in a long time, I think we're finally out of trouble. Driving away from that grand, cold house, I felt a lightness I hadn't felt in years. I glanced at my kids in the rearview mirror, at their bewildered but visibly relieved faces, and an idea sparked. "Hey guys, how would you feel about dinner at Gibson's Steakhouse tonight?" Their simultaneous gasps of pure, unadulterated joy were all the answer I needed. Gibson's was a legendary Chicago steakhouse, the kind of place we'd only ever driven past, the kind of place where one dinner would cost more than our entire weekly grocery budget. But tonight, it wasn't about the money. It was about making a statement, not to my family, but to my children and to myself. We were worthy. We were not scavengers, and we would never, ever eat scraps. Gibson's Bar Steakhouse was an oasis of warm, golden light and quiet elegance. The valet in his sharp red jacket raised an eyebrow almost imperceptibly at our aging Camry, but he opened our doors with the same professional courtesy he'd shown the driver of the Porsche in front of us. I handed him the keys and a tip that was probably smaller than he was used to, but it was what I had. "Welcome to Gibson's," the hostess greeted us, her polished smile faltering for only a fraction of a second as she took in our casual clothes amidst a sea of suits and cocktail dresses. "Do you have a reservation?" "No, I'm afraid not," I admitted, a flicker of doubt entering my mind. Maybe this impulsive act would end in us being turned away. To my utter surprise, she consulted her tablet and gave a small nod. "We just had a cancellation. We can have a table for you in about 15 minutes, if that's all right." The relief that washed over me must have been visible on my face. "That would be wonderful, thank you." As we waited in the opulent wood-paneled lobby, Mia tugged on my sleeve. "Mom, can we actually eat here? Isn't it like $1 million?" I knelt down to her level, meeting her worried gaze. "Tonight is a special occasion, sweetie. Tonight. We're celebrating our independence. And sometimes you have to do something special to remind yourself what you're worth." Leo was gazing up at the massive chandeliers, his mouth slightly agape. "This place is so fancy," he whispered. "Do they have cheeseburgers?" I let out a soft laugh. "I bet they have the best cheeseburger you've ever tasted, and you can order anything you want." When we were led to a plush booth with a crisp white tablecloth, a waiter appeared almost instantly. He had a kind face and a genuine smile. "Good evening, my name is David, and I'll be your server tonight. Can I get you started with something to drink?" The kids ordered Cokes, a rare extravagance, and I treated myself to a glass of Malbec, something I almost never did, partly because of the cost and partly because, as a single mom, I always felt the need to have a perfectly clear head. When David returned, we placed our order. Leo did, in fact, get a burger, though this one came with aged Gruyere and caramelized onions. Mia chose the grilled salmon, and I opted for a simple chicken dish, still subconsciously trying to mitigate the financial damage despite my earlier bravado. As our waiter left, Mia looked at me with her old soul eyes. Are Grandma and Grandpa going to be mad at us forever? I took a slow sip of my wine. They're probably very upset, yes. But being upset doesn't give you a license to be cruel. What they did tonight was wrong. "Why did Grandma say we had to eat scraps?" Leo asked, his voice small, the earlier hurt still lingering. "Did we do something bad?" My heart ached. The idea that he might internalize that cruelty, that he might think he deserved it, was unbearable. "No, my love, you did nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing. Sometimes grown-ups get so tangled up in their own problems that they say ugly things. But that ugliness belongs to them, not to you." "Is Aunt Sophie really going to come live with us?" Mia asked, her voice laced with anxiety. "Our apartment is so tiny, and Noah and Chloe are always mean to our toys." I reached across the table and took her hand. "No, honey, no one is moving in with us. Our home is our sanctuary, and we decide who gets to be in it, period." As we talked, I watched the tension slowly drain from my children's shoulders. They sat up straighter. Their smiles came more easily. They started chattering about school and their friends, the toxic cloud of the evening finally dissipating in the warm, lively atmosphere of the restaurant. Our food arrived on heavy porcelain plates, looking like works of art. "This is the biggest hamburger in the whole world," Leo declared. "My salmon has flowers on it," Mia said with a giggle, pointing at the delicate microgreens used as a garnish. We ate slowly, savoring every bite. The food was incredible, but what I was really savoring was this moment. The three of us, a little island of defiance and self-respect. I realized with a pang of guilt that I had never truly defended them before. I had taught them to absorb insults, to make themselves small, to accept being treated as less than, all for the sake of a family that was poisonous. "I need to use the ladies' room," I told them after our plates were cleared. "I'll be right back. Why don't you two look at the dessert menu while I'm gone?" Their enthusiastic agreement made me smile. In the quiet elegance of the marble restroom, I pulled out my phone. My hand trembled slightly as I scrolled to a number I hadn't called in years. The phone rang twice before a warm, familiar voice answered. "Claire? Is that you, my dear? Aunt Carol?" "It's me," I said, my own voice catching in my throat. "I'm so sorry. I hope I'm not calling too late." Caroline Vance had been my mother's best friend in college, and she was my godmother. They'd had a massive falling out decades ago over something neither of them would ever discuss, but Carol had never forgotten me. She sent birthday cards with checks I was told not to cash, and graduation gifts my parents deemed inappropriate. At 73, she was a widow with no children, and, according to the family rumor mill, fabulously wealthy from her late husband's early investments in tech. "It is never too late for you, my dear girl, but I can hear it in your voice. Is everything all right?" That simple, unconditional concern was all it took. The dam I had so carefully constructed all evening broke. The words came pouring out, the years of casual cruelty, tonight's ultimatum about the scraps, Sophie's bizarre demand for me to cover her expenses, my father calling me a servant. I told her everything. When I finally finished, there was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line, and I panicked, thinking I'd overstepped, that I'd burdened her. "I have been waiting for this phone call for 25 years, Claire," she finally said, her voice thick with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "I always wondered what it would take for you to finally see them for who they are." "You knew?" I whispered, stunned. "Of course, I knew." "Why do you think your mother and I are no longer friends?" I confronted her about the way she and Robert treated you when you were just a little girl. He was so blatant in his favoritism for Sophie, and I told Catherine she had to be your champion to ensure you felt just as loved. She accused me of trying to tear her family apart and told me to never mention it again if I wanted to have any contact with you at all. I leaned against the cool marble wall, the floor seeming to shift beneath me. I never knew. She made it very clear that if I told you, I would be cut off from you completely, so I stayed in the wings. I watched from a distance, and I hoped that one day you would find the strength to see the truth. "I see it now," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Yes, you do," she agreed. "So the question is, what are you going to do now?" I took a shaky breath. I have no idea. I just walked out on my entire family. My sister is apparently broke and needs a place to live. My car is dying, and I'm at Gibson's Steakhouse, about to spend $200 I don't have. Carol's laugh was rich and genuine. "Good for you. The perfect place to sign your Declaration of Independence." "A declaration I can't afford," I admitted. "Claire, listen to me. I have always intended to leave my entire estate to you. Your mother knows this, which is probably why she's worked so hard to keep you under her thumb. But I see no reason for you to wait until I'm gone to start living your life. This changes now." "Carol, I didn't call you for money," I protested, horrified that she might think that. "I know you didn't, darling, and that is precisely why I am offering. I have more money than I could ever spend and no one to share it with. I want to establish a trust for you and the children, immediately." The words didn't seem real. I don't know what to say. "Say yes," she said firmly. and then listen because there's something else you need to know about your parents' current situation. Something that explains a great deal about tonight. For the next few minutes, Carol laid out a story that made me grip the counter for support. My father's company had been hemorrhaging money for years. A series of disastrous, high-risk investments had pushed them to the edge of insolvency. The grand estate had been mortgaged to the hilt, and Carol herself held the most recent and largest note, having stepped in when the banks refused to lend them another dime. "They are 3 months delinquent on their payments to me," she explained calmly. "I've held off on taking action because I wanted to see if this crisis would finally make them do the right thing by you. Tonight, they gave me my answer." When I returned to my table, my children were giggling over a gigantic slice of chocolate cake, their faces smeared with fudge. My phone had started buzzing incessantly in my purse, lighting up with my parents' and sisters' names. I silenced it and slid back into the booth. "Is everything okay, Mom?" Mia asked, always so perceptive. I smiled, a real, deep-seated smile. "Everything is more than okay, sweetie. I think things are about to get a whole lot better." After paying the bill, a number that caused only a fleeting moment of anxiety, we drove home. My phone buzzed and chimed the entire way, a frantic chorus of calls and texts that I ignored. Whatever five-alarm fire was raging back at the estate could burn until morning. Tonight was about my children. Tonight was about us. We got home to our small apartment building just after 9. The second-floor walk-up, which had often felt cramped and shabby, suddenly felt like a safe harbor. Its simplicity felt honest. Its smallness felt cozy. "Can we watch a movie?" Leo asked, still buzzing from the excitement. On any other Sunday, I'd have said no, that it was a school night. But this was not any other Sunday, absolutely, a short one. You guys pick. While they settled on the sofa with a Pixar movie, I finally looked at my phone. 32 missed calls, 51 texts. They chronicled a rapid descent into panic. From my mother. "Claire, this petulant display is beneath you. Come back at once." From my father. "Your sister needs you. This is a family obligation." From Sophie. "You were always the selfish one. You've made Mother hysterical." Then the tone began to shift. From my mother. "Please call us back, Claire. We need to talk." From my father. "This is an urgent financial matter that requires a family conference." From Sophie. "Look, fine, I'm sorry about the scraps comment. Can you just call back?" And then the most recent ones. From my mother. "Caroline Vance just called us. Please, Claire, we need to talk to you." From my father. "Whatever Carol told you is a gross exaggeration. We can explain. Don't do anything rash." From Sophie. "Are you really going to let that woman turn you against your own family? After everything we've done for you?" I had to stifle a laugh at that last one. I put the phone on silent and went to join my kids on the couch. After I tucked them into bed, lavishing them with extra long hugs, I went through the familiar Sunday night routine of packing lunches and laying out clothes. The simple domestic tasks were grounding, a reminder that the world would keep turning. I slept soundly for the first time in weeks and woke up early. I called my principal and took a rare personal day, no questions asked. I then arranged for my neighbor to watch the kids after school. At exactly 9 a.m., there was a knock on my door. It was Carol, looking impeccable in a chic pantsuit, with a kind-faced, serious-looking man beside her. "Good morning, my dear," she said, enveloping me in a warm hug. "This is my attorney, Mr. Davies. I took the liberty of bringing him. I thought it best we formalize things quickly." Over coffee at my tiny kitchen table, they laid it all out. Carol had indeed called my parents and informed them that due to their misrepresentations and default, the loan on their property was being called. Normally, this would be a long foreclosure process, Mr. Davies explained in a calm, measured tone. However, the agreement they signed with Mrs. Vance includes an acceleration clause in the event of material financial misrepresentation. In short, they have 30 days to repay the loan in full or the property transfers to her. I was speechless. So they're going to lose the house? Carol patted my hand. They were going to lose it anyway, Claire. Robert's business is gone, and Mark didn't just leave Sophie on a business trip. He filed for divorce after discovering she'd racked up over $600,000 in secret debt. The condo is being sold as part of the settlement. She's homeless and penniless. My mind reeled. The entire flawless, wealthy facade had been a house of cards. What does this mean for me? I asked, my voice shaky. Mr. Davies slid a thick document across the table. Mrs. Vance wishes to establish an irrevocable trust for you and your children. The initial funding will be $10 million. I choked on my coffee. $10 million? Carol smiled. A starting point to give you immediate security and independence. There is also a provision for the purchase of a new home. As I stared at the papers, a loud, frantic pounding started at my front door. I opened it to find my entire family on the landing. My father, tireless and frantic, my mother, her perfect hair in disarray, and Sophie, her face swollen from crying, wearing the same clothes from the day before. Her children stood behind her, looking miserable. "We need to talk," my father barked, trying to push past me. I held my ground. "This isn't a good time." My mother craned her neck, her eyes widening in horror as she saw Carol and the lawyer at my table. "So it's true. You've conspired with her against us." Carol rose and walked to the door. Catherine, Robert, Sophie. What a pleasant surprise. I was just reviewing some new financial arrangements with my goddaughter. My father's face turned a blotchy red. "This is a family matter, Caroline. You have no business interfering. I made it my business when you defaulted on a multi-million-dollar loan," Carol replied coolly. Sophie lunged forward, her composure shattering. "Claire, you have to help us. They're taking everything. Where are my kids and I supposed to go?" For the first time, I saw the terrified woman beneath the shell of arrogance. I felt a flicker of something, not pity for her, but for her children, who were innocent pawns in all of this. "Everyone, come inside," I said, stepping back. "The children can watch a movie in the bedroom while the adults talk." Once the cousins were settled, we all gathered in my tiny living room. My father launched into a tirade, accusing me of betrayal. I held up a hand. "Stop. Before we say another word, I want the truth. All of it." Over the next hour, it all came out. The failed business, the mountain of debt, the impending foreclosures. Their plan had been to pressure me into housing and supporting Sophie indefinitely, while they tried to hide their assets. "We were going to compensate you naturally," my father blustered. "By telling my children to eat kitchen scraps?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. My mother looked away. That was an unfortunate choice of words. "The stress has been immense." "Stress doesn't make you dehumanize children, Catherine," Carol cut in. "It just reveals what was already in your heart." It became clear they hadn't come to apologize. They had come to demand access to my newfound resources, framing it as their right as family. Finally, I took a deep breath. "I am willing to help," I said, "but not on your terms, on mine." The room went silent. "Sophie and the children can stay here for 2 weeks. During that time, they will respect my home, my rules, and my children. I will then help you find an affordable apartment and connect you with a financial planner. And all of us," I looked at each of them, "will begin family therapy together, immediately." My father looked like he was about to have a stroke. "Are you insane? 2 weeks? Therapy? Do you know who you are talking to?" "Yes," I said calmly. "I'm talking to my family who desperately needs my help after treating me and my children like dirt for my entire life. So yes, I know who I'm talking to. The dynamic changes today. These are my boundaries. You can either accept them or you can leave." But they are not up for negotiation. The stunned silence in the room was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. In that moment, I realized their power over me had only ever existed because I had allowed it, and I was done allowing it. 6 months can feel like a lifetime. As I sit on the porch of my new house, watching Mia and Leo chase their cousins, Noah and Chloe, through the sprinklers in our big backyard, it's hard to reconcile this reality with the life we used to live. Those first few weeks were a crucible. Having Sophie and her kids in our tiny apartment was beyond difficult, but it was also necessary. The forced proximity broke down the walls between us. One night, she finally broke down, admitting she had always been jealous of me. "You built a real life, Claire," she sobbed. "I just lived in a gilded cage. I don't even know how to be a person." It was the start of a new, fragile relationship built on a foundation of honesty instead of pretense. With Carol's guidance, I bought a beautiful 4-bedroom home in a wonderful school district. The trust she created means my kids' futures are secure, a weight off my shoulders I hadn't realized I was carrying. I've even started a small educational consulting business from a home office. My parents lost the estate. They now live in a modest condominium. The adjustment has been brutal for them, especially my mother, who misses her social status. But there are changes. My father, forced into retirement, has discovered woodworking. My mother has started volunteering at the local library, finding a sense of purpose that isn't tied to appearances. Sophie got a job managing a clothing boutique. It suits her, and for the first time, I see genuine pride in her when she talks about her work. Most importantly, the kids are thriving. Freed from the toxic environment of comparison, the 4 cousins are becoming genuine friends. We all attend weekly family therapy with a wonderful psychologist, Dr. Evans. Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out, she told me. They are fences with gates. You get to decide who comes in and when. That wisdom has been my guide. I can be compassionate toward my family's struggles without sacrificing my own well-being or my children's sense of worth. Carol is a constant, joyful presence in our lives, the doting grandmother my kids always deserved. Sometimes, she said to me recently as we watched the children play, the family you need isn't the one you were born into. It's the one you build. Last Sunday, exactly 6 months after the Takeout incident, I hosted dinner. The conversation was easy and light, free of the old undercurrents of judgment. When Mia showed off her new painting, my mother studied it and gave her a specific, thoughtful compliment. Later, my father came up to me in the kitchen. "This is a lovely home, Claire," he said, his voice quiet. "You've done a wonderful job with these kids. It wasn't a grand apology, but it was a start. The journey is far from over. Old habits die hard. But now, when those old patterns emerge, they are called out, not tolerated. The most important thing I've learned is that it's never too late to demand respect, and that sometimes walking away from the table is the only way to find your place at a new one where everyone is welcome and worthy. If my story resonates with you, know that you are not alone and that you deserve to be treated with kindness. Setting boundaries isn't an act of war, it's an act of self-preservation. I'd love to hear your own stories about setting boundaries or navigating difficult family relationships in the comments below. If this story helped you in any way, please give it a like and subscribe for more stories of healing and transformation. And remember, sharing this could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Thank you for listening. May you find the courage to build the life you and your family truly deserve. End of story.